What is up, everybody? It is JT Sports. I am back to you guys with another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. On this episode, I'm going to be giving you guys some of my key reactions and takeaways from this past week of college football. Going to be talking about Oregon's upset victory over Ohio State. FSU, are they in trouble after suffering a huge upset loss to Jacksonville State? Clay Helton, are we in the final days of the Clay Helton era at USC? The Florida quarterback controversy. A lot of people out there have mixed thoughts on who should be starting for the Gators. Should it be Anthony Richardson? Should it be Emory Jones? And lastly, how about those Razorbacks? We're going to be talking about Arkansas's victory over Texas. Now, before we get into it, if you are a first-time listener of the podcast, welcome. Make sure that you go ahead, leave a 5-star review if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts. Also, make sure that you go ahead, follow me on my social media pages. My Instagram and Twitter is both JT Sports _. Once again, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JT Sports _. And lastly, make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel, JT Sports on YouTube. The first thing I want to talk about Oregon's upset victory over Ohio State. Oregon defeated Ohio State 35-28. And I'm really pissed off with how the media is looking at this win from Oregon's perspective, because I'm just really irritated, okay? Like, every time there's an upset that takes place, the media never really gives the team that pulled off the upset victory enough credit. Like, for example, UCLA defeated LSU last week, and all people were talking about was what's wrong with LSU, what went wrong in this game, and it seemed like not enough people really gave UCLA the credit they deserve for pulling off the victory. You know, they kind of just said, oh, UCLA won the game, and that pretty much was it. You know, it was all about what LSU did wrong, and not enough people were talking about the team that actually won the game in UCLA. And I see a similar situation taking place. Like, so many people are talking about Ohio State losing. You know, what went wrong for Ohio State, what Ohio State needs to fix, and not enough people are talking about how well of a game Oregon played. Oregon defeated Ohio State without their two best players on defense, and Justin Flo and Kayvon Thibodeau, which Kayvon Thibodeau is probably the best football player in America right now. He's probably going to end up being a top 3 pick in the 2022 NFL draft. So it just really pisses me off how the media kind of is just throwing aside Oregon's victory. You know, this was a huge win for Oregon, because when you think about what this win means for Oregon football, this win is going to be momentous in terms of recruiting. It's going to be a huge boost for the Pac-12 conference. Like, enough people aren't talking about Oregon's win. Too many people are just talking about Ohio State's loss. Okay, and I understand why, you know, some people are concerned about Ohio State, because Ohio State is a team who a lot of people believe is going to be a lock for the college football playoffs this year and all that. But we need to start giving more praise to the teams that actually win the freaking games, and not more praise to the team that loses the game. The team that wins the game should be the team that gets talked about the most. And it's just really irritating to see people just talking about Ohio State and how they lost the game and what went wrong, and not enough people are talking about what Oregon did. Literally, like, enough people, there should be more people out here talking about why Oregon won this game and what's next for Oregon instead of what's next for Ohio State. Like, it just really pisses me off, man. Like, give Oregon their props. And people are, I'm not saying that nobody's talking about it. I'm just saying not enough people are talking about it. It seems like all people care about is, you know, Ohio State losing this game. So when you look at Anthony Brown, man, I think he had a really good game. Anthony Brown so far this season for Oregon has been what I envisioned him being. You know, he's been really solid. He's extended plays. He's had a veteran presence. He doesn't turn the football over a lot. He's been making good decisions. 17-35 for 236 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He also has 65 rushing yards on the ground. He also had some big plays when he was able to keep the drive alive with his legs. He had a big run, which he ran over a defender, put his shoulder down. He switched the ball to the other arm arm that he was carrying in, and he trucked over a defender. And you also had Cesar Verdell, who had an incredible game, 20 carries for 161 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, was averaging 8.1 yards per attempt. And once again, I have to stress this again because I don't think enough people are talking about this, but Oregon won this game without their 2 best players, and Justin Flo and Kayvon Thibodeau. They did not play in this game. So this is a really talented Oregon team. And this definitely is a Oregon team that is a legitimate championship contender. You know, going into this game, a lot of people's questions about Oregon is, okay, is this finally the team that we think they should be with all of the great recruiting classes they've brought in over the last couple of years? Like, now they have to prove that they are now in the leagues that they can compete with the Ohio State or Clemson. So that's pretty much what everybody's major concern was. Well, at least that's what I was looking at going into this game, okay? Because I already made a video talking about why I believe that Oregon is a college football playoff contender. And this game kind of showed me, you know, it kind of solidifies that. Now, my next question is going to be, okay, what does Oregon do next? Because we already know that Oregon is, a contender. But my thing is, are they going to end up being one of the Final Four teams when the season ends? Because you still have to play Arizona State. And the Pac-12 is really weird because there are a lot of unusual upsets that take place. Like Oregon lost to Oregon State last year. Like, it's just really weird. So you don't really know what you're going to get out of the Pac-12. Like, Oregon is a really good team, but you don't really see a lot of consistency week to week in this Pac-12 conference. And also Arizona State also looks really good also. They look pretty formidable. You got UCLA there. So I mean, like, it's going to be pretty interesting to see how Oregon ends up finishing off the season, because this is a Pac-12 conference that you don't really know what to expect from a week-to-week basis because there's not a lot of consistency. Like, we know Alabama, if they're playing like a team like a Kentucky or South Carolina, they're going to steamroll them. But in the Pac-12, you don't really have that consistency. So any given week, Oregon could go down. You can say the same thing for Alabama, but if we're just being honest, in the Pac-12, I just don't really think there's a lot of consistency out of the teams in this conference. Oregon has the talent, but my biggest concern about Oregon never really was talent. I knew they were talented. My biggest issue with Oregon is going to be, okay, can you remain consistent? Can you go through the rest of your schedule without having a hiccup unless you lose to Arizona State? I can understand a loss like that, or a loss to UCLA, or a loss to USC, but a loss to a team like Oregon State or something like that, can you survive, those teams having that upset brewing? So that's really my biggest concern that I have for Oregon at this point. I'm not really concerned about the talent because, as we saw, yesterday on Saturday, or whenever you're watching this a couple of days ago, Oregon definitely has a talent that they can end up being in the college football playoffs this year. And I don't really like talking about the college football playoffs so early, but this team definitely is a team that's a legitimate contender for a national championship. And I've been really asking this question for over the last couple of years: when is Oregon going to be able to put it together? Like, I believe that Oregon, with how well they have been recruiting, they could go on a run in this Pac-12 conference similar to what Clemson has done in the ACC, because the Pac-12 to me isn't really all that great. It's kind of weak. There's still a lot of teams who are trying to figure things out similar to the ACC. So when you look at how Clemson has dominated the ACC, I feel like Oregon could dominate the Pac-12 in similar fashion. So I'm really intrigued in Oregon and seeing how they finish out the rest of this year, because the Pac-12 conference, there's a lot of inconsistency. Like, you see more upsets happen in the Pac-12 than any other conference, in my opinion. So for Oregon, you have the quarterback in place. You have a really athletic and talented defense. Like, this is a team that most definitely is a legitimate championship contender. And surprisingly enough, like, I was really surprised at how people were viewing Oregon after this game, like a lot of people were really surprised. Like I thought that more people would be a little bit more high on Oregon. I view Oregon as being in the same situation as like a Texas A&M or UNC, a team that is, on the outside looking in of being a legitimate college football playoff contender and whatnot. So I'm really surprised a lot of people, feel the way they do about Oregon. Like a lot of people don't really view this team as a legitimate college football playoff contender or a national championship contender like I do. So for right now, I'm still really high on Oregon. I still believe that they are going to get in this year, and I'm really impressed with the win that they had against Ohio State. I ended up having to leave early. I didn't get to finish watching the whole entire game in its entirety because I ended up going to an FAU game because I attend Florida Atlantic University. So I was trying to keep up with the score, but the connection was kind of bad and whatnot. So I was trying to figure out, okay, is Ohio State going to come back? Is Oregon going to be able to hold on? Because I actually picked Oregon to lose this game. So I thought the Oregon was going to end up losing, and I was going to be like, oh man, but it ended up happening. Oregon ended up holding on. And I'm somebody, if you guys are new to the channel, I love chaos. I love upsets. I want upsets to happen every single week. I want college football to have the most chaotic season that we've had since, '07? So I was really happy that Oregon was able to get this victory over Ohio State. I'm really excited for the future of this Oregon football program. And I feel like a lot of people in the national media don't really realize how good this Oregon team is. And it's pretty evident by, how everybody's reaction was after the game. Everybody's so focused on Ohio State. Nobody's talking about Oregon. And a lot of people don't even realize that this team is kind of in the same bracket as Texas A&M. Like they're right there in terms of being on par with some of the blue bloods in America. Like your Clemsons, your Ohio States, and Bama. Like Oregon's right there in that conversation. If you ask me, like they're really close to breaking that door and getting right back into the college football playoffs because they were in the college football playoffs like a couple of years ago when they defeated when they lost to Ohio State and they defeated FSU back when Jameis Winston was playing. So you look at Oregon, I view them as being in that Texas A&M bracket, like they're right there and to being on par with some of the best programs in America. And this game right here just kind of solidified it, they can compete. That's what my biggest concern was. Can Oregon prove to me that they can be on the field with a team like Ohio State? Because you got to remember, I believe Oregon was a double-digit underdog in this game. I think the spread was like 13 or 14 points in the favor of Ohio State. So the fact that Oregon won this game, they did it by a touchdown, shows you that, this team definitely is capable of competing with some of the best schools in America. I got a lot of friends who are Florida State fans, and I really wasn't going to, plan on making a, topic about this or making a video about this, but I have a lot of FSU fans who keep asking me, JT, how do you feel about FSU losing to Jacksonville State? So FSU, Florida State, lost to Jacksonville State at home 20-17. And everybody wants to know how I feel about Mike Norvell right now. And here's my thing, okay? Like, I don't really know how to feel. And if you're an FSU fan, you're in a weird spot right now. Because you're like, okay, Mike Norvell, this is a rebuild. Okay, I understand that this is going to take a couple of years. FSU just isn't going to, be one season in and be right back at the top. Like, this is a process. But at the same time, also, if you're a Seminoles fan, you're in your head saying, damn, I understand this is a rebuild, but do we have to lose to Jacksonville State in the process? Like, there are just certain things that are inexcusable. There are just certain things that should not happen. And FSU losing to Jacksonville State is one of those. No matter how down FSU football is, you shouldn't be losing to a Jacksonville State. And I understand that upsets happen, but certain upsets, are just inexcusable. They're inexplicable. And when you look at a school like Florida State that, believe it or not, has a pretty talented roster according to the 24/17 talent composite rankings. This is a really solid football team, at least compared to on par of Jacksonville State. So there's really no reason why they should have lost this game. And the only two positives that I have from this game is Joshua Corbin. He's pretty much the most reliable player on the offense. He had 15 carries for 109 rushing yards, 7.3 yards per attempt, and 1 touchdown. And if you're FSU moving forward for the rest of the year, Joshua Corbin needs at least 25 to 30 touches. Then you got edge rusher Jermaine Johnson, who was a transfer from the transfer portal. He has been wrecking havoc so far for FSU this year. He's been their best player on the defense side of football, 2.5 sacks against Jacksonville State. But outside of that, there wasn't really any positive takeaways. I don't really like how the coaching staff of FSU went about managing the game. I didn't really like the play calling. I still don't understand why people try to get Jordan Travis involved. Like, if you're going to bring Jordan Travis on the field, you got to switch it up. Okay, stop with the stupid Wildcat bullcrap, because it's pretty obvious when Jordan Travis comes in the game, guess what you're going to do? You're going to run the freaking football because he's not that great of a passer. And last week, it was kind of odd that Jordan Travis came out the game. I believe his helmet got taken off, so he had to come out of play. And then Mackenzie Milton finished off the game. Like, it's just kind of really weird, because I felt like Mackenzie Milton should have been the starting quarterback anyway going into that Notre Dame game. So it's kind of weird how FSU has kind of managed the Jordan Travis, Mackenzie Milton situation. Like, it's really weird. And then on top of that, Mackenzie Milton didn't really have, that great of a performance. He doesn't really have the best wide receivers around him, doesn't really have a great offensive line. So I think he's trying to do the best that he can with what he has in front of him. But overall, it just was a really lackluster performance from FSU. And really, it's no excuse for losing this game. And Mike Norvell came out after the game and apologized to the fans, as he should, because anytime that you have Jacksonville State going around taking their team flag and playing it in the middle of your field, that's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. And at this point, how I feel about Mike Norvell, I don't know if he is the guy or if he isn't the guy, because, when Willie Taggart was going into year 2 and he was having his struggles, a lot of people wanted him gone. Everybody was coming for Willie's head. So, where's this energy with Mike Norvell? Now, Mike Norvell is having a lot of success on the recruiting trail right now. Currently, the last time I checked, like 10 minutes ago before I started recording, FSU had the 10th best recruiting class in America right now, according to 247. And for me, I'm interested in seeing how their recruiting class finishes out the rest of the year when, National Signing Day takes place. Because if FSU keeps on having the season that they're having and they're not putting on a lot of wins, I understand they're in a rebuild, and recruits understand that this is a rebuild going on. But at the same time, some recruits out there may be like, they're rebuilding, but I at least want to see something. And, losing to Jacksonville State doesn't really give a lot of recruits a sense of hope, because when recruits know who's rebuilding and who's not rebuilding. So what recruits are looking for out of a school that's rebuilding, like, they at least want to see, some glimpses. Like last week against Notre Dame, you saw some glimpses. A recruit that's currently committed to FSU right now can be like, okay, like, this team isn't a rebuild, but they're fighting, they're competitive, they're winning, they're beating teams that they should beat. No recruit that's committed to FSU right now is going to want to go to a school that loses to a team named Jacksonville State. And a lot of people don't even know who the hell Jacksonville State is. So, this is a really bad loss. A really bad loss. And I'm really stuck in between the fence. Like, okay, like, I understand Mike Norvell is rebuilding. This is a FSU football program that's in rebuild mode. But at the same time, there are just some things that you can't let slide. I can understand losing to Notre Dame. I can understand losing to Miami. I can understand losing to Clemson and whatnot. But nobody can make any excuses for losing to freaking Jacksonville State, an FCS team who you should have blown out. And I understand this is college football, things happen, but this just isn't a really good look for FSU. And what's even more embarrassing is that it happened at home. and how it happened. You lost by pretty much a last minute Hail Mary. It's just a lot of bad execution that happened on that play. Literally, like, that play should never happen. I honestly don't know how it happened. I'm still going back watching the play. I'm like, bro, like, so many things went wrong for FSU in that play. You had a defensive back that wasn't really in a good position to make a play on the ball. Then, you had a missed tackle. Like, there's just so many things that went wrong that play. Like, it was just poor execution overall in the whole entire game. So I have a lot of friends who are FSU fans. As you guys know, I'm a Miami Hurricane fan, and I'm not bashing FSU. I think I'm being pretty reasonable because Miami football isn't nothing to write home about neither after we damn near escaped Appalachian State. I don't even think we're going to beat Michigan State. So, after, as a Hurricane fan, I kind of understand what FSU is going through. Now, Miami isn't down as bad as FSU is, but I kind of understand, your frustration. Because there are teams out there that you should beat. You shouldn't be losing to a school like Jacksonville State. You should be blowing schools like Jacksonville State out. And this doesn't really look like a good look on Mike Norvell's part. So, when you look at Willie Taggart, when they almost lost to what school was it? Sanford? Everybody was ready to bring the pitchforks out. So, for FSU, man, if you're a Seminoles fan right now, like, I honestly don't really know how to really feel about the future of this program because, yeah, you're doing really good on the recruiting trail. Yeah, you had a really hard fought game against Notre Dame last week, week 1, but then you come out and you lose to Jacksonville State. And no disrespect to the Jacksonville State alumni out there or the Jacksonville State fans out there who are watching this game. You played a really good game. All props to you for winning. But if we're being realistic, FSU really should have won this game. So, if you're a Seminoles fan, there are a lot of things that's going through your head. Like, yeah, you understand that this is a rebuild, but damn, do you have to lose to Jacksonville State in the process? Doesn't really give you a lot of hope moving forward. Clay Helton at USC. So, USC lost to Stanford last night, 42-28. And this loss pretty much all but solidifies, we're most likely probably in the last days of the Clay Helton era at USC. Now, I don't like coming on here and saying that coaches need to get fired and whatnot, because I don't like calling for people's jobs. But I think it's pretty obvious that, the writing is on the wall for Clay Helton at USC. Like my guy Juice Alert says, this is his catchphrase. He needs to get this merchandise and put on the shirt. USC has peaked under Clay Helton. My guy, Juice Alert, make sure that you go ahead and check him out, Juice Alert Podcast. That's a phrase that he uses a lot. But yeah, USC has peaked under Clay Helton. And the first couple of years Clay Helton was at USC, they had a pretty good run. 2016, won the Rose Bowl, won 10 games. Won 11 games, went to the Cotton Bowl 2017, and after that, everything has pretty much been downhill. 5-7, 8-5, 5-1 last year. Like, when you look at USC right now, man, like, this is a really talented roster. You're in California, one of the most talented states in America when it comes to football talent. There should be no reason why USC should be losing to Stanford. And Stanford is a respectable program, okay? Stanford is a really tough program to win games at. David Shaw is one of the most underrated coaches in America. Not going to take anything away from Stanford. But at the same time, this was a Stanford team that lost to Kansas State last week, 24-7, I believe. So, USC should have won this game. And for Clay Helton, he knows that his job security is pretty much in question. And he knows that he pretty much is on his way out. But the thing is, a lot of USC fans are saying, this is a move that should have been a long time coming. Clay Helton should have been out the door. According to a lot of USC fans, the way a lot of Trojan fans feel, they feel like Clay Helton should have got fired after 2019. It's kind of hard to fire a guy, after, what happened last year of them making it to the Pac-12 championship and whatnot. But at the same time, you kind of have to be in line with your expectations. And everybody's saying, when it comes to these blue blood programs that used to be good in the past, like Miami and Texas and USC, everybody always likes to say those teams are back anytime they have, a big time win or they just have a lot of momentum. Everybody likes to say those teams are back, but then, they really aren't back. And when you look at USC, out of all of the former blue blood programs that have a chance to actually be legitimate championship contenders, I think USC is in a better situation than Texas and Miami, because for Texas, it's going to take a couple of years. It's going to take at least 2 or 3. For Miami, hell, it may take damn near a decade, depending on how the coaching situation goes for Miami. But the thing that USC and Texas have that Miami doesn't is that, they have access that they can end up getting a really good coaching hire. They can get a really highly sought after coach. So Miami, you can't really get a guy like a Billy Napier or a Luke Fickell. USC can. Texas could if they needed to. You get what I'm saying? Like if Steve Sarkisian didn't want the job, then they probably could have went out and tried to get a Luke Fickell or Billy Napier. So when you look at USC at this point, if I'm in the athletic department for USC, I'm looking at potential candidates to replace Clay Helton. So who are going to be the next guys in line who, if you're USC and you're a USA fan, who you would want to be on the phone with? Well, I'm definitely calling up Luke Fickell with Cincinnati. And I understand that Luke Fickell and that Cincinnati program, they're heading in the right direction. Then also you have them potentially making the move to the Big 12 with UCF and BYU. Like, if you're Luke Fickell, that's pretty interesting. Because do you stay with Cincinnati, even though they're making the move to a Power 5 conference? Or do you jump ship for USC, a team that pretty much only needs like one good year, and they can definitely be in the national championship conversation? Because the thing with USC is that it's not talent. Like, talent is there. As a matter of fact, USC doesn't really need to rebuild. USC gets the right coach in there, they're winning 10, 11 games off rip. According to 24/7's team talent composite rankings, USC has the 10th most talented roster in all of America. So when you look at USC, like, you get the right coach in there who knows what he's doing, is able to come in there, assemble a good staff and whatnot. USC could easily be a destination that a guy like a Luke Fickell or Billy Napier could win 10 games year one. So Luke Fickell, I don't think he's out the realm. But, I think he's pretty content with how things are going with Cincinnati. Now, Billy Napier with Louisiana, okay, I definitely think that's a realistic possibility. I think that would be a really good hire. Billy Napier is really good at player development. I think he's really good when it comes to having his team prepared on a week-to-week basis. Like, I think Billy Napier will be a really good hire for USC. And there's probably some other good coaches out there who are kind of under the radar, who I'm not talking about. UAB has a pretty solid coach. Like, there's a lot of solid coaches out there. But I think the two big ones, if you're a USC Trojans fan who you probably want to be on the phone with right now, or if you had a chance to pick, it probably would be either Luke Fickell or Billy Napier. But it looks like the writing is on the wall for Clay Helton, and I don't really think that USC is going to win or be able to win their division in the Pac-12. I don't think they're going to make it to the Pac-12 championship game this year, and I think they're most likely going to end up losing to UCLA. So you already look at this loss to Stanford. Then if you lose to UCLA, like, the writing definitely is going to be on the wall. But all Stanford really did, if you're a USC fan, you should be sending a thank you note to Stanford. Because Stanford now has kind of sped up the process. Now, before the season started, we were wondering, okay, what's going to happen with Clay Helton's future after the season? Now we're asking the question, is Clay Helton even going to be able to make it through the season? So the writing pretty much is on the wall for Clay Helton. And like I said, I'm not somebody who likes to come on here and say people need to be fired, this guy needs to be fired and whatnot. But I think the writing is pretty much on the wall for what needs to be done. And USC isn't a program that needs to go through a long-term rebuild. Like, this is a program that if you're a guy like a Billy Napier, a first-year head coach, you can come in and win 10 games right off the bat. It's not down bad like a FSU or something like that. Like, USC is closer to getting back to the college football relevance or being back to that national championship contender than what Texas and a school like Miami is. It's going to take a little bit of while to get Miami back on track. Similar to Texas as well. Texas, it's going to take them at least 2-3 years. But when you look at USC, I really think that this team only needs a good coach. And this team could go winning 10 games right off the bat and making it to a New Year's Six bowl game. So it shouldn't really be that hard to rebuild USC. They have a pretty talented roster. You're in California, one of the most talented states in all of America when it comes to football talent. You have easy access to some of the best recruits in that state. So, if I'm Luke Fickell, I'm giving USC a pretty good look. Or if I'm Billy Napier, I'm definitely giving USC a pretty good look. I think those would be your two leading candidates right now if USC was looking at, getting ready to get rid of Clay Helton, right now at this minute. So, I think those would be the two top guys on the list when it comes to head coaching candidates for next year for who could replace Clay Helton. But at this point, I was questioning before the season started, will Clay Helton be the head coach of USC football going into 2022? Now, I don't even know if Clay Helton is going to be the head coach of USC football for the end of the year. So, before I get into my next topic, if you are new to the channel or you're watching this on, YouTube, make sure that you go ahead, subscribe, like the video. Make sure that you check out the JT Sports Podcast. Link to it will be down in the description down below. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, make sure that you go ahead and you leave a 5-star review down below. Greatly appreciated. Greatly helps the podcast out a lot. I got to get a sip of water real quick before we start the next segment. All right, so Florida defeated USF this past Saturday, and I have a lot to say about the quarterback situation that's kind of unraveling with the Florida Gators right now. So, who should be the starting quarterback for Florida? Emory Jones or Anthony Richardson? Now, there are a lot of Florida fans who seem to be pretty 50-50 on this situation. Now, Dan Mullen pretty much has said that Emory Jones is going to be the starter going into Alabama. But when you look at Anthony Richardson, man, every time he's on the field, he's making plays. And his first two passes against USF went for touchdowns. He was 3 of 3 for 152 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and ran for an 80-yard touchdown. And finished the game for 115 rushing yards and 1 touchdown. Meanwhile, you had Emory Jones, who was 14 of 22, 151 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 2 picks. He had 81 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown as well. But listen, I love Emory Jones. Okay, I've been watching Emory Jones ever since I was a freshman in high school. I'm in my sophomore year now in college, and I really want to see Emory Jones succeed. Okay, and there are a lot of Florida fans who love Emory Jones as well. But at the same time, you simply can't overlook Anthony Richardson. I think it's only a matter of time before Anthony Richardson ends up taking the job from Emory Jones. Now, I don't really know how Dan Mullen is going to play out this 2-quarterback system, especially going against Alabama, because I really feel like going against FAU and USF, you don't really see the negative effects of having a 2-quarterback system. But when you play a school like Alabama, I think it's really important that you have good rhythm and that you have good timing. And when you're switching in between quarterbacks every single drive or a play, it kind of ruins the chemistry, the timing gets thrown off. So I really feel like against Alabama, we're really going to have a really good look at this quarterback situation. I feel like whichever quarterback plays the best against Alabama should be the starter for the remainder of the season. And I really love Emory Jones. Emory Jones is one of my favorite players in college football. I've been waiting for years to see Emory Jones finally get an opportunity to shine. And I made a video talking about why I feel like Emory Jones have a breakout season before the season started all the way back in May or April. So I'm really high on Emory Jones. I love Emory Jones. But I just feel like with the way things are unraveling with Anthony Richardson, like at one point it was okay, how much Anthony Richardson are we going to see? He's just going to get mop-up duty. But he's getting significant playing time. And it's to the point like he's now, a factor in the offense. Like now you're kind of game planning ways to get Anthony Richardson involved. So if I'm Emory Jones, like his margin for error is really small at this point. Now Dan Mullen is being really patient with him. He's still keeping him as a starter going into the game against Alabama. But I mean, Emory Jones is on a pretty slippery slope right now. Because if he comes out flat against Alabama, Anthony Richardson lights up Alabama, his job is pretty much taken at this point. So I think that Dan Mullen is going to keep riding out this two quarterback system until we get into the Alabama game. But I think after they play Alabama, we're going to have our answers in terms of who should be the starting quarterback for Florida for the remainder of the year. Now, I'm hoping that it's Emory Jones. Nothing against Anthony Richardson. I just want to see Emory Jones succeed because I've been a big fan of Emory Jones ever since he was playing in high school. I've waited several years to finally get an opportunity to see what Emory Jones can do as a starter. But I mean, like his two games against USF and FAU haven't really been all that stellar, and they haven't really been all that great for what you expect quarterback going against inferior opponents like FAU. No offense to, the university I currently attend right now, but, Emory Jones should have had a better performance against FAU than what he did. You also look at a performance against USF. It wasn't all that great. And Dan Mullen said, there's growing pains. He understands that maybe it's taking a little bit longer for things to click for Emory Jones, but it doesn't look like it's taking all that long for things to click for Anthony Richardson. And Anthony Richardson is a freak. This dude is fast. He's huge. Like, listen, man. I would not be surprised if we see Anthony Richardson starting over Emory Jones at some point this year if Emory Jones' performance doesn't improve. Dan Mullen's being really patient. I have to give him a lot of credit because there are a lot of coaches in this day and age of college football who would already started Anthony Richardson over Emory Jones. So when I look at Emory Jones, man, I love him a lot. He has questionable decision making. His accuracy kind of is hit and miss at times, but I definitely feel like he has a lot of potential. He also knows the offense. He does have a little bit of experience, but overall, man, I think that Anthony Richardson is just too talented. Like, I just feel like eventually Anthony Richardson is going to end up taking over this job at some point if Emory Jones' performance doesn't improve. Because I mean, at first, before the season started, he was a backup. We didn't really expect to see much of Anthony Richardson. Well, at least I didn't expect to see much of Anthony Richardson going into this year. Now, there are some people out there who are kind of on top of this who felt like Anthony Richardson kind of could make this, a little bit of a controversy. But I wasn't really expecting this to be a controversy. I thought Emory Jones would come in, be able to do what he needs to do, and, prove that this is his job. But it hasn't really felt like Emory Jones has really took a hold of it. It doesn't really feel like this is Emory Jones' team because the performances haven't really led up. And Emory Jones has been in the Florida program for a while now, so it really shouldn't be any excuse. As a matter of fact, the role should kind of be reversed. Emory Jones should be the quarterback coming out, lighting the world on fire, and pressing everybody, not Anthony Richardson. I've been more impressed with Anthony Richardson than I have with Emory Jones. And then you got to remember, Anthony Richardson isn't even the starter. He's the backup, and he's out playing Emory Jones. And that's scary. He only threw 3 passes. 2 of them went for touchdowns. It seems like every time that Anthony Richardson is in the game, something great happens. So I just feel like when you look at Anthony Richardson, like he just has something special. Like he's just a playmaker. He runs that. He's wearing that number 15. You remember that Tim Tebow number, that number 15. Like I think it's just really something special with Anthony Richardson. Like he just has a special spark. He has a special it factor about him. And I'm not saying that Emory Jones doesn't have that. I'm just saying like when you look at Anthony Richardson, man, you're looking at somebody who is going to be special. really special. And your Dan Mullen seemed like he can't keep him off the field. Like, Dan Mullen has to find a way to get him involved, it seems like. It seems like Dan Mullen, stays up late at night trying to figure out new ways to get Anthony Richardson involved in the game. So I just feel like it's only a matter of time before we see Anthony Richardson starting over Emory Jones at some point this year, if Emory Jones doesn't pick it up. And I hope that Emory Jones is able to get things back on track. I hope that he's able to end up having a really strong game against Alabama. And overall, I hope that he can remain the starting quarterback for Florida for the remainder of the year and throughout the rest of his collegiate career. But I think it's only a matter of time before we start to see Anthony Richardson taking over the reins at QB for Florida full time. And like I mentioned, that 2 QB system, it has some positives because you kind of keep the defense on their toes. You don't really know what to expect. You don't really know what you're going to do. But at the same time, it kind of ruins the timing and the chemistry offensively when you keep on switching in and out quarterbacks. So really interesting seeing how this QB situation for Florida plays out. I want my guy Emory Jones to succeed. I really do. I love Emory Jones. He's one of my favorite players in college football. But I really feel like it's only a matter of time before Anthony Richardson takes over, man. Because every time he comes in the game, he's making a play, man. And he's not really getting the amount of snaps that Emory Jones is getting either, man. So imagine what Anthony Richardson could do if he was, the full-time starting QB and Florida didn't have this quarterback carousel going on right now. So you guys let me know how you guys feel about the quarterback situation for Florida. Who do you guys think should be the starting quarterback, Emory Jones or Anthony Richardson? Let me know down in the comment section down below if you're watching this on YouTube. Last thing I want to talk about Arkansas football. So the Arkansas Razorbacks defeated Texas 40-21. Now, this was a game that I predicted Arkansas to win, even though I wasn't able to put out my official predictions. And Arkansas is kind of like my adopted football team for this year. I am a Arkansas football fan for this year. This is a team that I'm taking over as, like a part-time fan. And I'm rooting for since the Miami Hurricanes suck. And they haven't really gave me much to cheer for. So I'm rooting for Arkansas because I love rooting for the underdog. And I always have this second team that I root for aside from Miami that, kind of it's an interesting story to watch. Last year was Indiana. The year before that it was Minnesota. I like watching these teams who seem to come out of nowhere and have success. And Arkansas is a team that I've kind of been ahead of the curve before the season even started. If you guys go back and watch my Why Arkansas be the most improved team in college football, I said that I believe that Arkansas is the biggest sleeper in the SEC West. A lot of people are picking LSU and Ole Miss, but I believe it's going to be Arkansas. As a matter of fact, I think that Arkansas is going to be the second best team in the SEC West this year. I think they're going to be better than Texas A&M. I think they're going to be better than LSU. And they have a game against Texas A&M coming up in 2 weeks. They play Georgia Southern on the 18th, and then they play Texas A&M the following week after. So, that's going to prove if I'm right or wrong, if Arkansas does end up being the second best team or not. But I believe that they are better than Texas A&M. And when you look at the performance that they had against Texas, it was really impressive. And Arkansas's offensive line really took over that game. This team was able to run for a bunch of yards. AJ Green was averaging 9.6 yards per attempt. Raheem Sanders was averaging 6.2 yards per carry. Dominique Johnson, the way they were able to run the football was really impressive. And Texas is a pretty solid football team, okay? I don't want nobody to feel Texas was overrated always. I feel like Texas is going to be a really good team this year. They should still be around the top 15, somewhere around that range. So Arkansas got a really good win against a really solid Texas program. Even though Steve Sarkisian is in his first year and Texas is still trying to figure things out and get things, heading in a good direction. But overall, if you're a Texas fan watching this, there should be no shame in you losing to Arkansas. And you want to know what's crazy? So when I was researching facts or stats and notes for the game, because I was going to preview this game, the Texas-Arkansas matchup, but I wasn't able to get to it because schooling took over. I went on the Bleacher Report app, And, Bleacher Report has, like, the community section where fans can, talk about things and stuff like that. So I went in the Texas community tab on the Bleacher Report app, and I said, hey, Texas fans, what are your biggest concerns about Texas going into this Arkansas game? Now, a good amount of Texas fans were pretty reasonable. They said the run defense, they don't really know how Hudson Card is going to perform in his first road game. And then the majority of them probably said something like, oh, I'm not worried about Arkansas and stuff like that. And Arkansas won the game. And I've been telling people, man, a lot of people keep sleeping on Arkansas football. This team is going to be one of the best teams in the SEC West this year. You want to know why? Because they're really good up front. They're really good on the offensive line, and they're really good when it comes to their defensive line as well. Like, I think their offensive line is the best offensive line in the SEC. Better than Georgia and better than Alabama. And if you can win up front, and you're able to handle your own up front, you're going to be in the majority of games that you play, because that's basically what it comes down to. Like, a lot of people forget, they try to make football all about wide receiver and, cornerback and stuff like that. At the end of the day, it comes down to, can you win up front? Can you handle your own up front? And Arkansas can do that. And you have the quarterback in KJ Jefferson. I know he didn't have the best game from a stat sheet performance, but he didn't really need to do too much because of how dominant Arkansas was when it came to running the football. So you have a game against Georgia Southern coming up. Then that's when the season really starts. Okay, you got to play Texas A&M, you play Georgia, you play Ole Miss, then you got to play Auburn. Like, they have a really tough schedule coming up. And I don't know if they're going to be able to win all those games, but I really do like them to pull off the upset against one of those teams. I like them to be either A&M, Georgia, Ole Miss, and I'm pretty confident that they'll beat Auburn. But I really like this Arkansas team. This is a team that I have adopted. This is my adopted college football team for this season. I'm rooting for Arkansas. I want them to have a lot of success. And before the season began, I said that I can see Arkansas winning 9, maybe 10 games this year and surprising everybody and being the second best team behind Alabama in the SEC West this year, because this is a really good football team. You have talent at wide receiver, a lot of experience at wide receiver, and you got a lot of experience on defense. A lot of people got to remember that the only player that I believe Arkansas lost was a defensive lineman. I believe his name was Jonathan Marshall. They lost him to the NFL, but outside of him, like, they have pretty much all their starters returning. So, I mean, this is a team that's experienced, they're talented, and this defense is really, really good. Like, this defense is going to be really interesting to watch going against an A&M offense that's still trying to figure things out. Like, Arkansas, ladies and gentlemen, don't be surprised if you see Arkansas beat Texas A&M or Georgia, because I definitely feel like they're going to end up pulling off the upset against one of those two teams. Maybe it's going to be A&M most likely, because we don't know what's going to happen with their starting quarterback right now, because he went down with an injury against Colorado. So we don't really know what's going on. But either way, man, like, Arkansas is for real. A lot of y'all need to wake up on Arkansas. Sam Pittman is building something special. And a lot of people don't realize that Arkansas has been one of the more better teams in over college football history. Like, this is one of the most winning programs in all of college football. They're not like a diehard blue blood like Texas or USC. You don't really have, the tradition and pageantry that those programs have, but they're kind of a blue blood in their own right. Like, they may not be a national championship contender, or they haven't been a national championship contender like USC or Texas has been in the past and whatnot, but Arkansas has been a pretty consistent program for over the last couple of years historically. So it's really good to see this program have success. Arkansas fans are really good. You guys are really big supporters of the channel. So, of course, it's only right that I adopt Arkansas to be my adopted team that I'm going to root for outside of Miami this season. And I'm rooting for Arkansas, man. Like, I really like what Sam Pittman is building. This is a team that has a lot of experience. And this team, in my opinion, is going to end up being the second best team in the SEC West this year. Make sure that you go ahead, you screen record this, you screenshot it, you save it, do whatever you got to do. Arkansas is going to be the second best team in the SEC West. And I think I said this before, but if I haven't said it before, I'm saying it again, Arkansas, ladies and gentlemen, will be the second best team in the SEC West. I've been saying this all off season that a lot of people are really sleeping on Arkansas. Arkansas will be the most improved team in college football this year, and so far, they're proving me right. So you guys let me know down in the comment section down below how you guys feel about Arkansas. Do you guys feel like this team is for real? Do you guys feel like they can end up being the second best team in the SEC West this year? Do you think they can end up pulling off the upset against either Georgia or Texas A&M? Sound off down below. And this is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. If you are a first-time listener, make sure that you go ahead and leave a 5-star review down below. Make sure that you subscribe to my YouTube channel for the cut-up visual version of this podcast on JT Sports on my YouTube channel. Make sure that you go ahead and subscribe there. Make sure that you follow me on my social media platforms. My Instagram and Twitter is both JT Sports _. And I will see you guys shortly with my Week 3 college football predictions.